Hello and good evening, and welcome to season 2 of Varsity Maine Live from the Portland Press Herald. I am Travis Lazarzik, and tonight I am joined by my colleague from the Press Herald, Drew Bonavent, and from the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel, Michael Mandel. Guys, thanks for being with us. Our
Absolutely. Thank
guest
you.
tonight is a third-time visitor to Varsity Maine Live. He's our most invited back guest for now. We'll see if we keep doing that after tonight. From Coney High School, head football coach BL Lippert. BL, thanks for being with us again.
Thanks for having me again.
Um, we'll start before we get into the high school football season. I want to kind of take a look back at something that happened last week in the Autism Awareness Night that you have spearheaded since 2017. I understand you had 34 teams take part this year. Just tell us about how that came about and how it's grown.
Yeah, so my younger son, Lincoln, was diagnosed with autism in 2017 in January. And honestly, for a while, I kind of considered, should I not be coaching? The amount of special attention he was going to need and services he was going to require. I kind of thought, is coaching football too much for that? So thought how using football maybe to get the message out and make his life easier by making people just in my community in Augusta a little bit more understanding of autism and what it entails would be beneficial for him. And, we started in 2017, Coney Lawrence exhibition game. The next year was Coney Messalonsky. And then the next couple of years, it grew to, 8 to 10 teams, guys I coached with in the Lobster Bowl or coaches I knew from the, camps in the summer. And then kind of put it out to the state. And this year, 34 teams agreed to take part in it and, send a message to those communities that, coaches care, their teams care, and people that are maybe a little bit different aren't any less than the rest of us. So a pretty special night around the state, particularly for my family.
Okay, coach is frozen, but we can't hear him, so we're going to keep going.
That's probably a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Coach. Just when you started this event, what were what were kind of the goals in terms of what did you think it could grow into? Was it? I mean, you mentioned it. It was just the two teams that were involved from the start. But did you kind of have aspirations that this could be something that grew to this kind of scale, or has this just totally taken you by surprise?
Yeah, no, we really only wanted it to be, or only intended for it to be Coney and whoever our opponent was. In the first year, it was actually an exhibition game. I didn't even want to cloud our regular season with a game, regular season game. And our coaching staff the next year said, why don't we just make it our first home game, or one early in the season with our T-shirts, we can wear in September. And so we thought it would just be Coney and whoever the opponent was. And it really was other coaches getting involved and saying, can we do this too next year, BL? And we've had the refs reach out. This year we didn't get T-shirts to them in time. They kind of saw it online in mid-August, and the T-shirts were already printed. But I know Munzing Media was involved, and Mike Violet got a shirt and talked about it on the radio. So it's expanded well beyond anything we had thought about. Perhaps it reaching, and it's just a great message. All those players and those on those teams, at least for that night, are aware that their coach is supporting a cause, something beyond the game of football. And for a second, they're going to pause and say, why does Coach Cooper at Bonnie Eagle, or why does Coach Hathaway at Levitt, or Coach Friedman at Mount Blue, why are they taking the time to do this? And if it matters to them, maybe it should matter to me. And that's really the essence of why we started it, was to make people just aware that other people have a difficulty getting through the school day or getting through life in general. So if you could be compassionate toward those kids and make their life easier, that's what football players should do as leaders within the school, and that's what I think we've seen happen over the last few years.
And and shifting focus just to kind of to the football season itself, have there been any surprises that you've seen just across some of the classes, whether it's a team getting off to a hot start, a team struggling out of the gate, or anything else just concerning even the different schedules this year and some of the matchups that we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've confirmed what we sort of thought. I mean, I knew Oxford Hills was really, really good. We got a firsthand view of that in week one down in South Paris, which was not necessarily the most enjoyable evening in Coney football history. But then they go out without Soren and without Lincoln Merrill and knock off, Thornton Academy on the road, which is a pretty impressive feat. And Skowhegan's really good in our league, and I think most people knew that. So Levitt's really good, maybe a little better. I guess I was surprised maybe at the result of how handily they beat Portland. So Levitt's really good. So I think it's confirmed a lot of what we already suspected. And for me, I think the thing that I knew, but I guess I didn't really realize until I started seeing it in practice. Is the variability of the schedule is pretty stunning. You look at some team schedules, and Portland in particular jumps to mind. They've got an unbelievably difficult schedule. They got Oxford Hills next week. They're playing Bonnie Eagle right now. They've already played Levitt. And so the differences between schedules amongst like the teams in Class B South or B North is just really hard to grapple with. I understand maybe the games will be more competitive, but at the end of the day, it's hard to compare a team that maybe goes 3-5 with a brutally difficult schedule against a team that goes 6-2 with a softer schedule. I'm not sure if the Crabtree points have enough ability to sort of rectify that. And on top of that, you play a team that say goes 6-2 in C North, and you play a team that goes 6-2 in A North. That's really the same as far as Crabtree points are concerned. Presumably, the 6-2 team in A was a tougher opponent, but as far as the Crabtrees are concerned, you just beat a 6-2 team. So there's no weighting of the class. So I'm not sure if that's something they want to look at in the future, because I think playing 8-0 Oxford Hills is different than playing 8-0 fill in the blank in in D or C. So I think that's something that I didn't really think about too much as the schedules came out, but I think that's something they're going to have to look at, or I would advocate they look at, sort of providing some weight to playing the classes above you or below you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember to coach some of the ADs and administrators when they were talking about this becoming what they're going to do this season. We're talking about it. Just seemed like everybody had let's make sure we get together after this year and kind of assess how it went. And you wonder if that's going to be a point that they're going to bring up when they have that meeting. Yeah,
I would think so. There's got to be a few other issues, but I think I know Travis. I think it's you that kind of updates or maybe it's the Maine football thing online. I'm not sure, but they update kind of the crossover games or the new games and where they less of a blowout, more of a blowout. Maybe at the end of the day, there's a few closer games, but I think there's still going to be some blowouts because no matter who plays Oxford Hills or Levitt, I think it's going to be hard to keep it close with those teams. So the goal was to keep them closer, and I guess we'll find out if that is achieved.
Yeah, blowouts are just going to happen. I think it's part of high school football. Hopefully we can mitigate them somehow and, make them happen fewer and fewer times. I'm interested in seeing how the Maine New Hampshire series goes. New Hampshire's up 2-1 now. So there's a couple more games left in that. Mike, did you have everything for BL?
Well, we're kind of discussing some of the the things that they assess in every year. And one thing I've kind of gathered, and I've mentioned this in our sports group chats a few times, Drew and Travis, is kind of what the future of 11-man football is going to be. Not in terms of will it survive, because it definitely will. There are enough big schools in the state with big teams. But what's it going to look like? Are we going to be satisfied with having a 8-team Class A and an 8-team Class D forever, or are we going to go back to ABC, just do 3 classes as 8-man continues to grow?
Yeah, I think that's a question that a lot of us have asked is, if we have 45 or 50 teams, does that warrant, 4 classes, and however many 8-man teams there are, is that, 2 gold balls for that too? So I think that's a question for the ADs or, the MPA to decide, but it seems to me logical if you have, 45-ish teams, split it in, groups of 15 roughly. Whether you get rid of the north-south designation, I'm not sure. But that seems to be the most fair approach for me. And I wouldn't change what we are. We're going to be in B regardless. It would change maybe who else is in B with us, I suppose. But having 8 teams in A just sort of feels weird. A few of them haven't been particularly competitive the last few years. So if you broaden that Class A to include some of the bigger Bs, you might get some more competitive games and maybe even a different state champion. In some years, I'm quite sure Marshwood would have challenged anybody from A. In fact, they did when they played Thornton Academy. So I think broadening that would be better and healthier for the state of Maine football. But that's my opinion. Of course, everyone has their own.
One of the schools that dropped from A to B, and this was a while ago, was Wyndham, and we were talking about just teams that may be a surprise right now. Do you count Wyndham as a team that might be a surprise? You look at they're off to a 2-0 start, outscoring teams so far 63-8. One of those teams that they beat was Lawrence, who was projected to be really good. I mean, they lost so many players, even from a team that was dominant last year. Has this been surprising to you at all, or did you figure Wyndham was going to be a really tough team to beat again this year?
No, we knew Wyndham would be good. I think all our coaches recognize that. I think they were the 2 or 3 in our preseason poll. Coach Perkins has done a nice job developing depth there, and they've got a lot of players, and we knew even on the bench last year and their JV games they had some talent, and a lot of guys going one way that are now going both ways. So they have a talented secondary, one of the better secondaries in the state, I would contend. And their line play will come along. He does a good job of that line, so they're going to be in it till the end. When they play Skowhegan later on, they finish with a brutal finish. They are with Skowhegan, Oxford Hills, TA are their last 3 games. So they might have a really good record, and then that's a tough way to end the season heading into the playoffs. But that's a really good team, and come November they're going to be heard from, I'm sure.
BL, you have Skowhegan this weekend. Break down that game for us.
Yeah, really good Skowhegan team. One that, we've really known about, the LePage twins and Adam Savage. I remember getting a video from one of our mothers during our 8th grade game, and I think Adam Savage was a 6'4" 8th grade quarterback, and I was like, who is that guy? And so that class is loaded. They're really talented. We knocked them off last year, and I'm sure there's some level of, a little bit of revenge, but they're just a really good program that, has really been near the top for a long time. And Ryan's done a nice job preparing them every year. They've got talent at the skill position. They're really good up front defensively. So we have our hands full. It's like I said, a really good team. They were voted number 1 preseason in our league for a reason. I think most people recognize that, they might have been the best team in our league last year. Wyndham was really good, but they got outgained in the semifinal, like 375 to 81. I mean, they literally dominated, the yardage total, just couldn't punch it in the red zone. So it's been a really good team for the last 2 years. And, they've sort of geared up, they bought, all these new uniforms this year, and they've got new logos and new helmets. So this is the year they've had circled on their calendar for a long time, and they're playing like it. They really are firing on all cylinders. And that's even with, losing what you could maybe argue is their best player, the Linkletter kid, I think hurt his shoulder again. I don't know the duration of his injury, but they play without him, and he might be the best player in our league. So they're really, really talented team, and we have our hands full going up there.
If I could just add on to that, I talked to UBL, and I talked to Coach Libby up at Skowhegan midweek for our preview, which you can read right now on centralmaine.com, of this game, which is our game of the week. And it's interesting. Skowhegan played without Savage last week. He injured his ankle. Brendan Dunlap stepped in at quarterback, and you think what's going to happen to the offense, and it was like you wouldn't have even known they were replacing a player. They've just got that much depth where they can plug the next guy in, and it looks like, even if it's not the same team, it often looks quite like it on the field.
Yeah, I played high school baseball with Brendan Dunlap's father, and I could say Brendan is a far better athlete than Ben, his father, by far. A better baseball player. He's better looking. Okay, so I know Brendan Dunlap since he was a baby, and I saw him in there running the Skowhegan offense. He could run. I was like, man, he got those genes from somewhere else. But Ben, the father, could pitch, but Brendan's a better athlete. So whether it's Brendan or Savage, they both are really talented quarterbacks and guys that we've known about for a long time. And they've done it right. And they've got, obviously they've got Tyler Annis, and they've got the McEwen kid, the LePage twins at tackles and DN. So when you're building a high school football team, you have 2 good tackles, a good quarterback, a good run game, good guys to throw to, and Quincy McCrae and company. So that's a lot to defend. That's a lot to try to attack offensively. So it's been a lot of hours in the film room this week with no guarantee that any of it works. So we'll see what we can do up there against Skowhegan tomorrow night.
Okay. BL, thanks for joining us. Good luck. And again, great job with the Autism Awareness Night. We appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. And if you could freeze my screen every time, I appreciate that. I didn't have to worry about what I look like. Perfect.
We'll just
take care, guys.
That for next time.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, see ya.
BL Lippert from Coney High School joining us tonight on Varsity Maine Live. I have here in my hands the first edition of the Athletes of the Week for the season. So we will begin with Elise McDonald, Messalonskee Volleyball. She had 3 kills, 6 digs, 4 aces, and 21 assists to lead the Eagles to a 3-0 win over rival Coney on Tuesday. Shafi Ibrahim of Lewiston Boys Soccer. He scored 2 goals in each of the Blue Devils' victories last week against Bangor, Messalonskee, and Oxford Hills. Maddie Niles, Lawrence Field Hockey. She had back-to-back hat tricks for the Bulldogs in an 8-0 win over Morris on Saturday and a 3-0 win over Levitt on Tuesday. Drew, tell us about Maddie Niles.
I mean, she's been on the radar since she came in as a freshman last year. This is a player that Coach Shauna Robinson was saying right from the start. She's going to be a real player for us. And this was a team that was just full of returning starters. Ended up going undefeated in the regular season at 11-0, and she was looking like one of the more talented players in that team. And so the team was definitely looking for her to turn to a star, turn to a breakout player in her second year, and she's being just that for Lawrence team that's off to an undefeated start again. Once again, looks like one of the teams to beat in Class B, and she's just grown into an even more focal role.
Thank you. Nathan Blades from Portland Cross Country. The junior won his second straight SMAA race Friday, besting a field of 77 in a 5-school meet in Biddeford. His time of 16 minutes, 53 seconds was more than half a minute faster than anyone else. Elise McNair from Old Orchard Beach Girls Soccer. She scored 4 goals in a 5-1 win over Trape. She's coming off a season in which she scored more than 30 goals last year. She's one of, I think, everybody back from Old Orchard Beach this year. They've won 3 in a row after starting the season with a tough loss to a very good North Yarmouth Academy team. But it looks like Old Orchard should contend in Class C South. Tegan Pelletier, last time we heard from him, he was just making one of the biggest shots in Maine basketball history, but now he's a junior wide receiver at Oxford Hills, and he snagged 7 passes for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Vikings' 25-20 win at Thornton. KK Daggett from Mount Blue Girls Soccer. She scored 3 goals against Skowhegan and 2 against both Lawrence and Camden Hills. She also assisted on 3 goals. Mike, Mount Blue Girls Soccer is having a really good start to the season. What can you tell us about them and KK?
Well, she's really been the catalyst for their hot start in Class A North. They're 4-0. They've outscored their opponents a combined 20-1, including a win over Camden Hills. And if you've paid any attention to anything in Class A soccer over the past several years, it's what Camden Hills has done. So impressive there. They were just getting ready for their game against Lawrence when I was leaving the Mount Blue parking lot after covering field hockey tonight. Of course they beat Lawrence 6-0 when they played in Fairfield last week. So very good chance that they're on their way to 5-0, or might be 5-0 as we speak, since that game just rounded up. It's an interesting race at the top in Class A North. You got them, Brunswick, and Mount Ararat are all undefeated. Bangor is also undefeated with 2 ties. You look at it, and maybe they haven't had quite the schedule as Mount Ararat or Brunswick, but I don't feel like they're far behind, and they seem to be getting better.
Right, thank you, Mike. Will Falona from Scarborough Boys Soccer. He's a senior striker, and he scored both goals for Scarborough in a 2-0 win against Wyndham on Friday. He scored 3 more goals in Monday's 8-3 win at Sanford as the Red Storm improved to 4-0. Sophia Chung from Cape Elizabeth Field Hockey. She had 2 goals, including a double overtime game winner and a 3-2 victory over Freeport on Monday. Drew, what can you tell us about Sophia and Cape Elizabeth?
She's a very versatile player for them. She's a good athlete, and she's somebody who can contribute on both ends of the field. You just mentioned what she can do scoring, but she's also one of the top defensive players for the Capers. She was the only player to start as a sophomore for the team last year. Now she's playing a key role as a junior for a team that I think is going to be one of the stronger teams in Class B South. They got off to a slow start with a 6-0 loss to York, but we've seen that York might be the team to beat in Class B South, and Cape Elizabeth has started to straighten things out with 3 straight wins, one of them coming against a pretty strong Freeport team. And so they look like they found their rhythm, and a player like Sophia is a big reason why.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Quincy Tebow from Thornton Academy Girls Soccer. She scored with 2:14 left in the game to cap Thornton's come-from-behind 4-3 win over Bonnie Eagle. Noah Carpenter from Levitt Football, the junior quarterback, completed 9 of 13 passes for 93 yards. He ran for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns on 9 carries to lead the Class C Hornets to a 42-8 win at Class B Portland. Cora Eckelman, Sanford Volleyball. She had 14 kills, 13 blocks, and 13 service points as the Spartans beat Wells in 3 sets. Abby Williams from Waterville Cross Country. Williams won the girls' race by nearly a minute and 20 minutes, 29 seconds, topping Lena Martinez Nocido of Maranacook at the KVAC meet Friday at the Quarry Road Trails in Waterville. Emily Groves from Freeport Field Hockey. She scored all 4 goals in a 4-1 win over Lake Region on Friday. And finally, Muhammad Adal from Edward Little Boys Soccer. He helped the Red Eddies remain unbeaten with 3 goals against Brunswick and 2 goals and 3 assists against Hamden. There are your athletes of the week. Polls. We have polls. You can check them out at varsitymaine.com. These are voted on by sports writers from throughout the state and the Maine Today media family. We'll start with field hockey, and we'll just go through the top 5 in each of these. No surprise at number 1, Cheverus, defending Class A state champ, at all 6 first-place votes and 60 points. Number 2, Skowhegan with 54 points. Number 3, Scarborough at 44 points. 4, Biddeford at 36 points. And finally, York rounds out the top 5 with 29 points. Drew, this Chevers team is just as strong as it was last year, isn't it?
Yeah, they're firing on all cylinders, and it's probably scary to some teams that they've been clicking so well out of the gate. I mean, these are 8-0, 9-0 totals we're seeing them winning by, and they've beaten some really good teams too. It's not like they're just beating up on lower teams. Yes, they've played some down teams, but they also got one of those wins against Thornton Academy, who has shown themselves to be pretty tough in the early going. I mean, this is just a team with so much talent. They're so deep. They've got so much. They returned 10 of 11 starters. It's a team that's tailor made to be a team to beat. There aren't any real weaknesses that you can point to with this group in terms of what they have back. And they're led by all state caliber talent, and Lily and Lucy Johnson, as well as Taylor Torrey, and those are the big three that everybody mentions with them. But they go beyond that. Players like Olivia McCartney who can score. It's just a really loaded team, and a team that looks like they've come into the season with feeling like they have something to prove, even after going undefeated and winning a title last year.
Okay. And Mike, you saw Skowhegan today. They've been just dominating Class A North for 2 decades now. How did they look?
Well, they looked pretty good today. Mount Blue's a team that's a lot better than their record shows. They pressured them a lot defensively. Skowhegan was still able to play most of the game inside the attacking 25. They didn't get frustrated when Mount Blue's defense came through, which was something Paladowdy told me they did against Brewer early in this week. A game where they were really frustrated, despite winning to 7-2, which just shows you where Skowhegan's program is and the mentality they have, which is something you have to establish to win any championship, to win any regional championship, as many of the third amount of times that they've won it over the past 2 decades. But yeah, they looked good. Obviously, the talk is kind of their senior class with this team, but Layla Conway Jr. had 4 goals tonight, was always in the right place at the right time. They were communicating well. They were really clicking tonight. And, it's one of those things where when you have a team with the talent that they have, it can be, their expectations are high, so we'll see scores sometimes that they'll win by certain margins, and the coaches and players aren't happy, but that's just kind of the culture they built and the mentality they have. And there's been a bunch of previews written, one of which I wrote, of course, talking about how it's kind of them and Skowhegan both with their whole teams back, and they're 1-2 in the polls, and you've got to think that the most likely scenario, not to prognosticate for sure, but is them playing for the Class A title again in November.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Boys soccer might be the closest poll of the 4 we have in the fall. Number 1, Camden Hills gets 2 first-place votes and 64 points. Number 2, Scarborough gets 2 first-place votes and 47 points. Number 3, Yarmouth picked up a first-place vote and 43 points. Number 4, Deering picked up a first-place vote and 38 points, and tied with Deering is Edward Little with a first-place vote and 38 points. Expect, guys, that boys soccer will be tight throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you have a really good concentration of teams there. Mostly Southern Maine dominated. I think you look at Yarmouth, which is a team that the United Soccer coaches they were voted 15th in not only in Maine but in the entire country to begin the season. They were first in Maine and I think second in New England. And you got a good slew of teams behind them that well. I mean, they're not going to coast to a championship by any means.
Okay. Girls soccer, Scarborough, after a big win over Wyndham last week, is number 1 with 5 first-place votes and 67 points. Number 2 is Brunswick with a first-place vote and 57 points, followed by number 3, Cape Elizabeth, who picked up a first-place vote and 51 points. Number 4, Gorham, 1 point behind at 50 points. And number 5, Mount Ararat at 29 points. We talked about this a little earlier. Brunswick, Mount Ararat, and Mount Blue look like they're kind of separating themselves from the rest of Class A North. We know how tough Class A South can be with Scarborough and Gorham and Wyndham, who lost to Scarborough and Gorham in back-to-back games. Class B with Cape Elizabeth and Yarmouth is certainly going to be tough. So still a lot to sort out with girls soccer. Finally, with football, Oxford Hills in first place with all 8 first place votes after that win over Thornton Academy last week in 80 points. Number 2, Thornton Academy with 72 points. Number 3, Levitt with 55 points. Number 4, Skowhegan with 54 points. And finally, South Portland making an appearance in the top 10 for the first time in a while at 41 points. Drew, South Portland 2-0 and a big win over Marshwood in week 1.
Yeah, you got to think that started to make a lot of people, make a lot of believers out of people, who maybe thought that Class B was just going, B South was going to kind of look the way it always has with Marshwood, just pencil Marshwood in number 1 and Kennebuck number 2 and Portland number 3. And here comes South Portland showing that, hey, maybe they've started to kind of pick up some ground on these people. That win over Marshwood is big for all reasons. I mean, it's a big win for the standings. It's a big win for confidence. It's a big win for just kind of if Aaron Filia was trying to get his players to sort of buy into this, hey, we've arrived mindset. I don't know how you can get a win that proves that any more than that does. So they got to be feeling pretty good about themselves right now. And it's only 2 games. Any coach would stress that, but you got to be impressed with what we've seen from South Portland so far.
Right. And everybody knew Levitt was good. I think they opened some eyes by just dominating a very good Portland team last week. Levitt, a Class C team, plays a Class A team this week in Lewiston. So we'll, see how that goes. Even though Lewiston's got 1,000 more students than Levitt, I'd have to say Levitt's the favorite in that game.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, Coach Lippert earlier pointed out some, I don't know if you want to say criticisms, but certainly some questions with the scheduling in terms of a win over a 6-2 team in A versus C means the same. But one thing that's interesting about this scheduling is that you just get a chance to see some teams be able to really prove themselves with some of these crossover games, and it looks like Levitt's taking advantage of that. They beat a really good Class B team in Portland, and like you said, a chance to go up against Class A right now. I mean, we've always kind of wondered, what would Levitt do if they played tougher teams? And this scheduling does give a chance to kind of see that question play out.
Okay. Quickly, guys, let's kind of look at some games coming up in the next week or so that we're looking forward to. Mike, I think you're going to a really good football game tomorrow night, Coney at Skowhegan.
Coney Skowhegan's going to be a good game. Skowhegan's the clear favorite in this league. I think that's going to be that's going to be a good one. They'll definitely be the favorites. They'll definitely be the favorite against Coney. But Coney they're sort of starting to figure out their offense. They've got kind of a few variables at quarterback with between Davin Flynn and Dom Napolitano as to who can play there. So that's going to be a good one. Another one I'd be able to look out for, Travis, is Waterville MDI and 8-man. I know 8-man can go under the radar sometimes, but these are 2 teams last year when they first played. Waterville won 34-28 in overtime, and then they won a 50-40 thrilling game in the rematch in the 8-man Large School North quarterfinals. Waterville's 2-0. They've looked great. I know there were questions about how they're going to look without Liam Von Ozen in the lineup, but they look good out of the gate. And MDI with a win over a good Spruce Mountain team in week 1. They're coming off a bye with a lot of the same playmakers from last year, and you know that they're going to be motivated from those last 2 results to make it different this time. So that's another game I've got on my radar.
Okay, thank you, Drew. How about you?
On Saturday, I've got the Bedford, New Hampshire versus Thornton Academy football game at 1:30 p.m. at Hill Stadium in Thornton Academy, and I've had that game kind of circled for. Since we started finding out the New Hampshire teams will be playing Maine teams. I mean, all the matches looked intriguing, but this one in particular looked like a real marquee matchup, as much as you can get from an interstate game. In terms of Bedford, I'm from New Hampshire. Before I came to Maine, I started seeing Bedford kind of turn into that school that was a powerhouse in all sports, including football. And the closest thing to that in Maine has been Thornton Academy in recent years with what they've done on the football field. So this really does feel like a matchup of it's one of the best, if not the best, you can get from New Hampshire versus one of the best, if not the best, you can get from Maine. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that turns out.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Game I'm looking forward to next Thursday, girls soccer, Yarmouth at NYA, crosstown rivals. 2 teams who are contenders for the state championship in their respective classes, Yarmouth in B, NYA in D. So that should be a good matchup. All right. That's going to do it for this week on Varsity Maine Live. Please tune in next week. Remember, Varsity Maine Live is presented by Central Maine Power. For Mike, for Drew, for Frozen BL, I'm Travis. Thanks for watching.